What's up, YouTube? So, the Yukon needs work today. Still got the Corvette, still working on it. Problem is right now is the tires are completely shot and it's really cold outside, and I just cannot seem to get the guy with the dyno to sync up with me. So, still runs and drives. No major issues with it. The tuning just isn't polished and finished. On a cold start, it does some weird things that I'm still trying to work out, and I'll make the video of that. But it only does it on E85, so I'm still working on that. But the Yukon got bit by the same bug that I feel like every other GM of the same age and flavor gets bit by. The front differential has toasted bearings in it. It howls really, really bad when you drive down the road. It howls super bad, louder than the radio. It's all you can hear. Whenever I checked the fluid, whenever I pulled the drain plug out, gobs of metal shavings came out of it. So that's what I'm doing today. That's what this video is going to be about. Trying to figure out how to rebuild the differential in the front of this thing to get it running. It's my wife's, it's pretty much the main family car. Can't really take a family in the Corvette, and the truck is just really noisy and old and smelly. And so it's just not comfortable. It works, we're using it, but it's much better to have the big family Bertha up and running. So I'm going to be spending some time doing that. Some troubleshooting I already did was, like I said, drain the diff fluid, tons of metal shavings, pulled the drive shaft out of the front, and it just sat there. It won't go anywhere. So it has an open diff for the transfer case. So I'm just going to go ahead and rebuild it with as many metal shavings. It's just got like 99,000 miles on it. We bought it at 94,000 miles. So the way I understand it is these things are basically time bombs, and then they just explode, and you either get a new diff case or you end up having to rebuild it. So I'm just going to go ahead and rip it apart. It's a couple $100 worth of parts and just rebuild it. I got all the tools, so might as well. So here we go. That's after pulling the drain plug out, cleaning it off several times, driving it around the block and coming back. I had probably 2 or 3 other globs bigger than that whenever I first looked at it. Alright, it looks like this thing is just going to drop out. There's 2 nuts over here, 2 bolts over here. You take out the cross member and the axle. It looks like it's just going to drop right out. Looks can be deceiving though. Here we go. Now we'll wheel it over to the bench and start working on rebuilding it. Yeah, definitely time for a rebuild. Man, that is so gritty, it's ridiculous. Those bearings feel pretty smooth. But boy, this is so gritty. Yikes. So there's the half of the diff case. It actually has pre-made gaskets, which I love because I don't like using RTV. So I'll probably order some of them. But man, there's metal shavings everywhere. Look at that. Right there. There was metal shavings gunked up in here. This is toast. But I'm pretty sure it's just the pinion bearings. I'm not really sure why it was just the pinion bearings. Another little thing, just a tip. I really do not like the way gear oil smells. Maybe you do, but I don't. And I know I'm gonna have to order parts for this thing, and it's gonna have to sit for the whole week until next Saturday whenever I get the parts in, and I have to use my garage. So I like to bag them up in just a trash bag and tie them down, and then that keeps all the smell down. Oh, I forgot the other axle's still in there. Oh, geez. Oh my gosh, that is toast. There's your problem right there. I just hope it didn't eat through the bearing races. We can clean this bad boy out a little bit. So I'm having to do a little bit of redneck engineering here. I don't have a yoke puller. I don't really feel like going to find one and all that crap. So I've got a couple pieces of scrap metal here that I've got a hole in. A big high-grade bolt that's pushing on the center of the pinion. So this should just pull it off. It shouldn't be on there too tight anyway. Yeah, there we go. So I got me a socket that fits over the threads but presses on where the yoke meets. Hopefully I can just tap it out. Wait. There we go. One pinion removed. Looks like a sudden catastrophic bearing failure. That thing is nasty. And I don't know if this was low fluid. I don't know if it was just sudden failure. I have never seen a bearing fail like that. Only thing I can think of is low fluid. Because it marred the race really bad. The race is toast. There's actually chunks of bearing floating around in there. It allowed the pinion to move enough, it actually scarred the housing. You can see there's some shiny spots in the housing. Oh, and there's a spot on the race. You see that? So the race has failed, the bearing has failed. And it looks like it's just that one bearing, that one pinion bearing. Because this bearing seems fine. Just that one pinion bearing. Looks like everything else is fine. Looks like the pinion gears are still fine. So, well, now the hunt for bearings. To get that off there, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to use my bearing splitter and just press it off. I don't really know how else you do this. Yeah, there's a shim right there. I guess that's probably to make it so that you can actually get the bearing off. Ooh, I hate that smell. Ugh. If death had a smell, I'm sure that's what it was. So I got the bearings, got everything cleaned up, and I'm not the inner bearing for the I guess I can't remember. This is actually the inner in the factory service guide, but this is, I can't remember, lower or something like that. But the race for that, you can't really pound on it to get it down in there. So what I'm doing is heating up the case. It's at about 200 degrees right now. It's been sitting there for 5 or 10 minutes. And then I've got the race sitting in a bowl of ice. So now what I'm going to do is just drop it in there and try to tap on it as quickly as I can to try to get it in there. Well, it worked. I had to do some extra tapping on it with the bearing race driver, but it worked. And what's funny is this race, when I picked it up, fell out. So it just fell out completely. So at least that one will be easy to change. Now I got to do the other side. I got the pinion bearings, got the seal in there, got the yoke in place, got my little beam style torque wrench, and it looks like got about 15, 18, something like that. So I believe that's about as good as I'm going to make it. That's pretty much in spec. Now I got to put the carrier bearings on. So I have my housing over there heating up in that grill again to allow the case to expand so that I can drop the races into it with the carrier bearings. So what I'm doing, because they were kind of sliding around in there, and you could see they were definitely causing some wear, I'm cleaning off all of the fluid that comes with it from the factory to keep it from rusting. Getting it nice and clean, and then I'm putting some sleeve retainer on it. Permatex green high temp sleeve retainer, whatever. It's just something that bonds two pressed surfaces together. So I'm just going to put a little spooge of this stuff down in there because the tolerances were tight enough you couldn't get it out. It couldn't fall out, but it was definitely spinning. So just going to put a little bit of this retaining compound in there just to hold it in place because the race just has to stay put so that the bearings can slide around on it. So now I'll go get the housing and drop it in real quick. Should be just warm enough to let this thing fall down in there. Yep. Slid right in. Because it's warm, that compound should dry real quick. There we go. Just a little too hot to touch with your bare hands. Alright, checking my pattern now. And it looks perfect. It's like dead center. Both sides here. So I'm going to call that good. And I used, couldn't find any marking compound, so I just used a tub of grease. So that's all that is just lithium grease. The other thing is my year model came with this gasket. So when you're checking your pattern, you've got to have that gasket in there. I didn't glue this race in there. You can see it's still moving. Just because if I had to make any adjustments, I needed to make sure I could move this one. Alright, time to put the seals in for the axles, and then put the axles in. Give me a block of wood, tap it in. Alright, get the axle. And one way too. Long one goes in the housing, short one goes on this side. Alright. Now you're going to flip it over. And do the axle housing for this side. And it also had a gasket with it. So I went and got another one. And I'm using GM OEM parts just because I don't have a lot of time on this, given it's my family wagon and my wife uses it a lot. be the old gasket. You know, I could probably reuse that. I just don't want to deal with it leaking. And it was like a $20 part. And it would save me a lot of trouble to not ever have to worry about this again. So, since I was at the dealership getting other parts, I just went ahead and got this too. It's got these dowels to help locate it, which is kind of nice. This guy's probably going to have to... It was the way it came off, it was kind of a little bit of a struggle. I'm actually not replacing the gasket on this side. I popped the axle seal out on the other side because I wasn't sure if I was going to have to adjust the bearings or not. I wasn't really sure how that side came apart, so I just popped that side out. There we go. And now, fill her up with fluid. Sure, that'll make a mess. Really close to coming out. It's not quite there, but boy is it close. So we got the diff back in there, got it down on the ground. It's been sitting for a little bit, nothing looks like it's leaking. Now it's time to go for a test drive. I know it's a little bit dark, but it's what happens when you're working on the family vehicle late at night trying to get things running. So just check and make sure, test drive. I don't hear a peep. I don't hear a thing. So I've got houses on both sides. That's why I rolled the windows down. I don't hear a thing. I'm gonna call that a success. The noise is gone. Everything should be golden. Catch you guys next time.